Namaskar everyone, and it's a beautiful weather here in Bangalore. Clear sky, cool breeze. It rained a little bit last evening, 15 degrees. Can't ask for more, So it's awesome. So, folks, let me share a story of CEO Lounge, and it has a lot of correlation on what we are discussing today. So I thought, let me share my part of the story. In January 2020, cookies were crumbling and brand activations were thriving. And we had announced two large programs with anchor sponsors committed. And a few weeks later, the ground began to shift under our feet. By March, I was advised to cancel all the programs, preserve the cash, not to spend anything anywhere. By mid-March, COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. And it became clear that live events would be eliminated for the foreseeable future. And I knew that our cash reserves would not survive this timelines. So where were all our clients going? Online? Probably yes. So we had a small but a real window to assess the strengths and the weaknesses of what we had built and decide if we could migrate its capabilities from the physical world to the virtual world. Psychologically, this was not an easy shift for our team, and it was radically changing our vision for our company and the products that we have built in. But did we had an option? For the time being, I would say no. So we moved from physical to digital, and to digital. But what next? It does bring some kind of a creativity into what we do and how we do it, but we still have to measure the success of our physical programs that have been put together on a virtual space. And I've also been chatting a lot with a lot of marketers on what they are doing, and mostly they are busy building database. They are busy engaging the customers and keeping them interested, as well as gather data that will help them personalize the marketing efforts at a later stage. Data also shows that there's been a 60% increase in the media consumption. So how can marketers plan activities that are meaningful and true to their brand in this unprecedented situation? How are marketers managing shifting priorities? How are they strategizing the change in the marketing budgets? Where are they expect to increase the investment? To discuss all this and more, we have an outstanding panel of marketers today, and all speakers are my friends, industry icons, and they do not need any formal introduction. But I've been given a very strict guideline by my editor, Hari, and so allow me to do so. So we have Ajay Kakkar, Chief Marketing Officer, Aditya Birla Capital; Karan Kumar, Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer, DLF; Neeraj Kumar, Managing Director, Beam Centauri; Rana Barua, Group CEO, Havas; Sanjoy Mukherjee, Group CEO, Dr. Batra's Positive Health Clinic. We're missing a women marketer on the panel today. But, I can only say that they are the most sought after speakers and, getting their time is becoming more and more difficult. So we have to do with the all men panel for a little change, And to moderate this conversation, we have marketing icon, former Asia Pacific marketing head for HP and an angel investor, Lloyd Matthias, What is also interesting in today's panel is that all the speakers know each other very well from the past. So do not be surprised if you hear some cheeky tales during the conversation. So friends, let's get set for a discussion on marketing in the age of uncertainty, or let me call this as reunion of the ACE brand builders. So Lloyd, screen is all yours.
Thanks, Deepak. Thanks for that warm round of introductions. It's nice to have this little group across cities. So you're based in Bangalore, and there's Neeraj, Karan, and I out of Delhi or NCR, and Ajay, Sanjoy, and Rana out of Mumbai. And now that you mentioned the weather, I think Delhi is having an unusually pleasant morning despite the earthquake last night. It rained a bit, so things have been pretty good. But quickly to zero in on our discussion ahead, and this is going to be a nice, enjoyable chat, considering that all of us, have some parts of the common past. I think the first thing I just want to tee off was, frankly, 3 months ago, if someone had mentioned that, we'd all be at home for about 65 days, working out of home, I think we'd all be startled, right? Even as early as mid to late Feb, I think no one recognized what was up ahead. And now as we see it, things have changed dramatically in the last 2 months. A lot of us have discovered, new talents and new things that we never knew about ourselves and about our colleagues and about our organization. So it has been a truly testing period. In a manner of speaking, it's also a disruption that none of us have ever encountered. We've all lived through the financial crisis and terrorism and some serious issues. I think in terms of scale, in terms of how prolonged this is, in terms of the fact that it's impacting everyone, it's in that sense truly democratic, right? So Sophie Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada's wife, Prince Charles, Boris Johnson, it can get to anyone. So at one level, it's democratic. At the other level, I think it's also something that cause for great human concern, because while a bunch of us would indulge and say, what can we binge watch tonight, there's a whole part of humanity that's wondering what about their next meal, their next job. I think that also is a big concern. You've got a great panel. I think the good part is we've got various industries. We've got Rana from advertising. We've got Karan representing the real estate sector. There's Ajay from financial services. There's Sanjoy, healthcare and lifestyle. And there's Neeraj, of course, with Alcobev. So I think nice set of industry perspectives across the next hour or so. And of course, the audience questions. Let me kickstart by actually getting started with Karan. And I'm going to pass this around to all you guys. What was that feeling? Suddenly, out of the blue, we all used to a certain cadence about getting to office, meeting our teams, doing our reviews, getting things done. How did things suddenly feel over the last 60 days? Did you suddenly find yourself, kind of a little surprised, a little startled? How well did you cope over the last 2 months? Okay, I think we've lost Karan. Did you get me?
He's not hearing.
Okay, I think we've lost Karan's audio. Sanjoy, would you care to take that? How has been the last 2 months in terms of, A, your personal reactions, and B, in terms of the impact that you're seeing in business and life in general?
Well, it's quite simply, VUCA raised to the power VUCA. I couldn't have, like you rightly said, in the month of February, if anyone had said local trains in Bombay will shut down for 1 day, I wouldn't have believed. Now this is 2 months. So it's completely unprecedented and quite shocking. And I think when this actually happened, we are a 100% retail business where our patients have to walk in to consult us, and that business completely shut down. So obviously, it's times like these that your innovativeness, your speed, your inventiveness, everything comes to the fore, and you have to try and ensure. And also the entire cultural change of suddenly working from office, having to, at a very personal level, having to do without maids and servants and drivers and so on and so forth. And it was quite, in many ways, interesting, and in many ways shocking. And in terms of coping, I think we've managed very well, and we're well poised to not only survive but actually beginning to thrive, which is really interesting. But and at a personal level, I just went ahead and learned to do something which my wife has been telling me for the last 30 years, which is I learned to cook. And I didn't even know how to boil an egg before this. So it's been interesting. But the important thing is that we've all learned to kind of manage in this crazy situation. But as in the next 60 days, the crazy situation is actually going to be completely even more uncertain, because there's going to be, places are going to be opening up, closing down again, and opening up again. And so whatever rhythm that you've established at whatever level at this point of time, that's going to be changing, and it'll be like a series of minor tremors. And it's going to be interesting to see how we journey that. It's almost like you're going to go through a series of rapids, so it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Sorry, Lloyd, I'd lost the audio in the middle, but I'm back online now. Yeah.
No worries. Great, Karan. No, Karan, I'm just going to turn this across to you. I think the key point that Sanjoy made was, I think he's encapsulated well, is saying that this is a VUCA into VUCA, right? I guess everyone's familiar with the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity of what we've seen is something that none of us could envisage. My question to you, and very similar to what I asked Sanjoy, Karan, is that how have you personally coped over the last 60 days, and what are the big lessons that you can take away from it?
So both at a personal and a professional level, and working from home kind of merges or brings both of those two different worlds kind of closer to each other than it ever has before. I think all of us, I can speak for myself for sure, and I can speak for some part of my extended team as well. I think all of us have become more efficient. All of us have become more focused. All of us have become, very clear on what the agenda for a meeting is, when does it need to start, all attention, all focus during that meeting, the ability to connect with 15 of them on a screen virtually, have a very focused 45-minute discussion, put down what the to-dos are, and then try and reconvene, let's say later in the evening or on the next day as the case may require. I actually think that a lot of us have become far more efficient at what we do. I think our engagement with our teams, at least my engagement with my team, has become far more regimented, where you have 15 screens every morning at 11 o'clock, communicating with each other with a rigorous follow-up of what had to be done versus what has been accomplished. I also think that, as Sanjoy mentioned right now, the interesting part is that the first couple of, perhaps the first week, 10 days, was about trying to identify what the new process or the new protocol or the new schematic or the flow of things is. And now that you have that in place for about, after the first 10 days, as things change, situations open and close, movements open and close, you will get ready to encounter, again, differences in styles of day-to-day working that will come up. But I will say this, that I've now been going to office for about the last 10 days. And we've been working with 33% staff in the office. Even when I'm in office, I am not having any physical face-to-face interactions, engagements, meetings with any of my colleagues. Even while I'm in office and while 33% of my team is in office, I still continue to have a discussion with all 15 people on the screen at any given point of time. So in a lot of ways, there has been a new normal that's been set. And I'm to be very honest, I'm actually quite happy with the way how things have at least got more streamlined and efficient for me.
Thanks, Karan. Great perspective. Neeraj, on to you. And, I'm going to kind of get a little deeper into what Karan teed off, which is this whole work from home phenomena, right? Some parts obviously work very well. The fact that, typically most meetings start on time. In an office, you can always kind of amble in with your coffee 10 minutes late to a meeting. On a Zoom call, it doesn't work as well. And the fact that agendas are preset and, people tend to get more disciplined. So a lot of that is a good part. I think the other part that, companies and teams are coming to terms with is that work from home on a permanent basis, on a long-term basis, is not necessarily as easy. At senior levels of management with large homes, dedicated offices, working Wi-Fi's, life's hunky-dory. But you talk about smaller, as you go down the value chain, as you go down the organization, not everyone has the privacy and the exclusivity. So that's certainly one concern. The second part, clearly, on the whole work from home thought is the fact that a lot of our work from home happens seamlessly because, hey, we know all our office colleagues, right? Now it's just taking that relationship to a video screen. What happens when you don't know people, when you're really working remotely on a long-term basis? So just to get a sense, how did you at Beam Suntory, with your local team in India and with the global teams, how has been the whole working from home part? And to what extent is it impacting the way you run your business?
Thanks. Thanks, Lloyd. I think that's it's a condition we've now been living for over 60 days. And you're right. In the first instance, work from home, I think, works really well when there is a trust and a familiarity established between team members. And you're really carrying forward your relationships into that conversation that continues to be then focused on the delivery of that outcome of that meeting. What we realized right in the beginning, in the first week, I think the first biggest question or concern was getting the infrastructure right in the teams, and then both parents working, children at home. That became suddenly an area where it was such a practical situation to deal with. You have perhaps 1 or 2 laptops or a computer at home, both mom and dad if they're working. The child now needs a third one to attend her school, and therefore, how do you get that third screen out there? So I think there's been a lot of consideration given to say people can say no to a meeting. Globally, we've taken a view that every Friday going forward is a work from home Friday anyway. So that has helped people plan their lives a little better, including in India. And in the last 3-4 weeks and in the following 2 or 3 weeks, we will continue to give off 1 day in a week as an additional holiday globally. So there's been some flexibility drive to say, how do we keep our teams believe that they are going to be efficient? Surely they all want to come on those calls. But of course, how do you keep the balance? The second thing, of course, is we are at the end a social lifestyle category, and there used to be the traditional forms of channel, which is the retail or the off trade as we call it, and the on trade or the on premise. And now we're discovering the need for a home premise, which is going to be the third channel. And home premise used to be up and running in whichever way when parties would happen, but today, while you do not want consumption to go above, and you want to enjoy your tipple responsibly, how do we get that in with our employees first of all? So there are some calls where we've just said extremely voluntary, but we would encourage you to come with a glass in hand. It could be a water or a coffee. It could be at 6:30 in the evening on the evening if you want to just talk non-shop and get that. So there are some group conversations which we've gone into where it's just about enjoying an hour with colleagues or friends and not necessarily about work. So there is a bunch of these things which has happened. We've also recently said that if you need to, in a work day, take off 45 minutes between a meeting to cook or to have a quick nap and de-stress, it's okay. Your manager will understand. So those are things which I think a progressive organization will continue to look at. People are concerned. People are genuinely wanting to perform and deliver, and they're doing a great job. However, I think it's incumbent on the organizations to also believe that, first of all, there is trust in this relationship. Secondly, there is security in the job. And third, it's okay if your child comes in the screen or you want to say no to a meeting.
Great perspective, Dheeraj. I think very progressive. I mean, great to hear of the decision that, all Fridays going forward at Beam Suntory are going to be work from home Fridays. I think quite remarkable and, radical, if I may say, but I think still hugely progressive. And also recognizing the fact that, people have other priorities when they work at home. There are other issues. In fact, just to, play on the point you mentioned about, laptop times being shared, I think that's a reality. My last organization, HP, saw a big surge in the need for laptops when the lockdown first started. And also at the back end, the whole issues about security, the fact that a lot of decision making that was happening within closed doors is now happening remotely and is happening across various levels of the organization, which is also raising questions about, do we delegate enough, right? It's okay with senior levels of management, to get decisions done over a conference call, but we're talking about the front line. I think that's the perfect segue to get Ajay's perspective. So Ajay, in the financial services business where, a lot of your outreach happens through insurance agents and through the last mile, how difficult has been the transition over the last 2 months, right? You guys are a large financial services conglomerate. You operate on various sectors of financial services in terms of insurance, in terms of equity and various elements. And a lot of your outreach really happens digitally, but also personally, with insurance agents going out and personally selling this. So what's been the transition like at Aditya Birla Capital?
So Lloyd, as an industry, we've always seen ourselves as a high-touch industry, which is aided by high tech. And that's how it's always been, because complex products needs explanations, need repeat meetings, needs interaction. And therefore, it was sad news for us when we realized that we're going to be locked in our homes, and so is the consumer, and so is the distributor, because we normally reach out to the customer through distributor. Uh, but surprisingly, if you look at the list of anxieties that everyone has woken up to, uh, two of the key essentials that they're woken up to is health and wealth. What's going to happen to my health? What's going to happen to my wealth? And these are two conversations which till yesterday were not necessarily top of mind. An agent had to go, or a brand had to go and prompt you to getting into that conversation. Today, the conversations are coming up from within. So I think that's good news. And what's also good news is that while today we have opened up most of our key branches, people are not coming in, but people are yet engaging with us. So digital has become a way of us reaching out to our distributors, distributors reaching out to our customers. And anyway, for example, in our mutual funds, more than 50% was direct business, and a lot of that aided by the digital. So what's happening is people are finding newer ways to. The net is that other than the lending business where, well, people don't want to take money because they fear they won't be able to repay it, and for the same reason you don't want to give money, our other businesses like mutual fund, life insurance, health insurance, wealth management are actually as good as business as usual. So I think the new awakening of a consumer to himself realize that health and wealth is in his interest, because here today, where tomorrow, and therefore that's become a great, tailwind for us and our category and our brand.
Great to hear that, Ajay. I think that's fantastic, and that's putting the fact that people are starting to think about their health and wealth. I think is well said. I mean, suddenly people are realizing they're coming to terms with the mortality, the fear, but also at the same level, people are getting conscious about building immunity and looking at ensuring their lives. So I think that's absolutely right. I mean, a great point. Coming across to you, Rana, and you run a kind of an advertising business that has both creative media. You even have a healthcare arm. What's been the impact specifically on the team to start with in terms of this whole disruption? How have you, what's been the morale? How do you manage the team morale? We'll get into the business aspects a little later, but specifically, how was this transition in the last 60 days with your team and down to the clients and your other associates?
So I think, because a lot of the conversations have been covered, so I won't get into that bit, but coming from a advertising and a media kind of a world, I think, like I think Ajay mentioned that, it's a very touch feel, know your client, meet your client, interact with people, your partners and vendors. So I think the first few weeks was extremely tough. And I can speak on behalf of most of the media and advertising people. A lot of us found it extremely tough to figure that how do you settle in, how do you interact with your clients, how do you do your meetings, because you are conditioned to work in a certain way and not as systematic, or you don't function that when a client used to call a meeting at 9 a.m. advertising world knows that nobody arrives at 9 a.m. It's always that the traffic is there and something happens. These are old folklore jokes. So suddenly you were asking an advertising and media professional to act very disciplined, act in a very systematic way, start the Zoom call on time, wear the right clothes, wear the right dresses, suddenly we were losing a lot of the fun out of our business and all. But I think, what we decided, and I think, it's a universal line. We said the show must go on. If the show has to go on, and we have to be, and we need to be around, and we need to always be around for our clients. So, and because our business, whether you take health or you take media, you take creative, or you take experiential marketing, you take any of our businesses that we have, everything is linked to some client requirement or a client brief. So we decided that, put that into focus and let's work around it. And naturally, then came the discipline, then came all the meetings, then started coming a lot of interactions. What we figured out, and, I think what has happened, which is what I wanted to say, I think a lot of clients have become friends, and that's been fantastic. That's been the most amazing learning we've got in the last 2 months. So from pure play partners or pure play interactions and all, I think a lot of clients have just become pure play friends and partners, because a lot of conversations have now gone beyond meetings, and it's become somewhere we've now got used to a certain pattern of working. Are we all enjoying working from home as an industry? I don't think we are, because we would still love to go out, meet, and interact with our clients. When we present ideas, there is a certain drama we do, there is a certain way we work. But I think we got into a certain habit of ensuring that the work doesn't stop, because there's a lot of demand from a lot of clients. Once the clients settle down, and there are some 4 or 5 of them in this call itself. So while they are my friends, they're also in a way clients to many agencies, many vendors, many partners. Once they also settled down into their lives and they knew what exactly how they wanted to, whether they wanted digital, whether they wanted mediums, whether they wanted something, the advertising industry and the media industry started behaving in the way they wanted themselves to behave. And I think that is, I would give a massive hat off to the entire industry to adapt to each other beautifully well and understand each other, magnificently. Otherwise, it's always been a very weird way of working, where we always used to say, if Ajay was my client, I would say, Ajay, I don't understand you. I don't get your brief, and, keep dragging that issue. But the conversation was different. If Ajay had a point of view or a conversation, you would immediately jump in and say, let's understand it. This is a challenge. We must solve it. So there's a lot of new ways of working, and I'm glad that we've gone into a certain format which is extremely constructive. So very, very constructive. But again, to answer your one bit of the question, while we are still behaving and we are coming on time and we are trying to function very well and in a very disciplined way, I can promise you, if given a chance, we would first remove all that bit and, enjoy life the way we are. We are advertising, creative, media people. We are not supposed to be in such a state we behave the way we've been doing so.
Thanks for being so candid, Rana. I think that's a great point. I mean, there's some part of, the touch and feel that, as humans, we always enjoy, and there's no going away. And I also like the point you made about the fact that this whole, working remotely and working from home, in a sense, have helped us look beyond people from their office personas, right? We all come in a certain manner to the office that we present ourselves to the world. And it's nice to see a person in his home, with a kid running around or with a dog interrupting a call. I think in a sense, it all makes us, just feel there are people behind our employees, our colleagues, our peers. I mean, these are real people. They have real issues. They have parents, they have kids, they have pets, they have cooking to do. And I think at some level, there's a little humanity, element that that COVID has, in a sense, brought us all down together. But great, thank you, and thanks for sharing that. Let's kind of dive a little deeper into the business side. I'm going to, really get started with Karan. And one thing that we're seeing overall is that there's going to be a lot of, with every big crisis, there are a few changes. They say that till 2001, airport security was quite a breeze, right? After what happened in 9/11, nowadays, you really expect to kind of go through serious security. Again, till demonetization happened, a lot of us knew of something called digital payments. I think in that 2 months post demonetization, suddenly all of us, got a payment app. We can start using our Paytms or whatever else we use. So there have been some changes that affect consumer behavior that is going to have an impact on the various businesses that all of us do. And to kickstart with you, Karan, specifically in the context of real estate, DLF is the largest real estate company by far. There obviously has been a slowdown in this period, right? I'm sure transactions have either ground to a halt or come down pretty drastically. Will there be a big shift in DLF's entire kind of focus going forward in terms of building certain safety and security standards into their new department and commercial complexes that they build? And as a marketer, how do you see yourself kind of adapting and working with these changes? I mean, what's different about DLF's marketing in the months and years ahead, as let's say it was a few months ago? Karan, you're muted.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, super. Thanks, Lloyd. Great question. And a very pertinent one. I'll tell you a couple of things that's kind of happened in this period. One is that over the last 40, 45 days, 60 days, we've actually done reasonably healthy business. So it hasn't come to a grinding halt, and we've done reasonably healthy business, upwards of about 100 crores just in the residential real estate market itself. Yeah. Why did we do it? We did it because there are a lot of people now who are understanding and appreciating the merits of community living or condominium living versus the versus where they were staying earlier, which is independent houses, independent floors, standalone residential areas. Because what we've done over this period of 45, 60 days is we've gone actually out of our way to ensure that all our residents, all our community members, immediate and extended communities, and by immediate I'm saying the residents that stay in these various condominiums, are taken as good care as possibly can be taken, from safety, health, sanitization, disinfections, common areas, lobbies, services, restaurant delivering home food, life essentials being ensured, doctors being provided on campus, ambulances being provided on campus, so on and so forth, right? Now, what this does is that it also has a lot of these conversations and start going out beyond the current residents into people who are their friends and families, not necessarily staying in the same condominium, or probably staying in different parts of the country, or probably staying in different formats of housing, right? And therefore that message of positivity of how we're being taken care of, how we're being attended to, how the elderly are not feeling alone and insecure because there's somebody constantly checking on them, even if they're living alone, etc., etc. All of these are stimulates a certain demand into the residential sector as well. What's also important to understand is that yes, while people are buying and there's a certain amount of business that's happening right now, they will obviously always veer towards buying inventory from brands that they trust, brands who've had a legacy of delivering on their commitments. So obviously good brands, honest brands, true brands who've spoken without the faff and delivered on their promises are brands that will have a much better performance in this time and afterwards. But as a marketing guy, what also is important for us is to understand that, these stories, first of all, I think what this period has showed, at least to people like me and a lot of other people in this industry, is that more than that mass media advertising of a newspaper ad, I think the more conversations that you can have with individuals or smaller groups and clusters of your current customers and prospects, the more personal those conversations can be. Of course, as a category, as somebody else mentioned earlier, now real estate was all about going to a physical site and experiencing the product before deciding to write a check of, whether it's a 2 crore check or a 20 crore check. Now, how do we as a marketing function, as a marketing team, how do you take that experience to people's screens, as it were, over calls, over discussions, get them to touch, feel virtually the property as best as you can? I think those are some things which will decidedly change how marketing will unravel in future times. We've already started taking those steps. I'm sure a lot of my colleagues have as well. But I think some of those interesting nuances will take better shape as we go along.
Great, Karan. Thanks for sharing that. Sanjoy, coming to you, as a healthcare brand, Dr. Batras has been in business for a long time. But now with people's new consciousness of healthcare, on boosting immunity, on getting more focused, Ajay kind of touched upon that when he talked about people are having deeper thoughts about health and wealth. How do you see the business focus of Dr. Batras going forward? And what would be its specific impact to the way you look at marketing?
So, Lloyd, when this started, our first focus was, we have a fixed patient base of about 80,000 customers and patients. And our first fear was that how are we going to, retain them? Are we going to remain relevant for them or not? And, I think the first realization was, that old adage that a brand is as a brand does. And our point of view was that, listen, this is the time when our patients are most worried, they're most hassled, they're most, distraught about their health, about the entire situation, about the stress in their lives. There's so much of change happening. And our first point of view was, okay, our business seems to have come to a standstill because we are 100% retail business. We were not online, but leave that aside for a moment. Let us first reach out to our customers and be there for them. Reach out to our patients and be there for them. And that was our first focus. So we were actually able to, within a very short period, and an amazing amount of work got done. But we were able to get computers into our doctors' homes. We have over 350 doctors, and most of them are women, and they have families to also support. So, we were able to get computers there. We were able to get connectivity done, and we were able to start connecting with our customers. It didn't matter if the initial few consultations were super effective or not. It's just that they happened. Conversations happened. The doctors reached the patients, spoke to them, inquired about them. I think that really gave us a lot of confidence that we were there for the customers, and gave the patients a lot more confidence that we were there for them. And likewise, we were able to also very quickly establish, even it was pretty complex in the lockdown scenario, but establish a courier system. And this was way before even Amazon started delivery. But we were able to establish a courier system to get medicines to our patients. And that also gave them a lot of confidence. I think I have seen over the last 2 months that the focus on immunity has risen and risen and risen, and it's really exploding right now. And what's happening is that as the lockdown is slowly, gradually winding down, and people are leaving the safe cocoon of their houses, they are actually beginning to feel a lot more fearful, and they're wanting to become a lot more careful about about being immune. Also, as a lot of people have been saying, no one really knows when COVID is going to go away. No one really knows what's going to happen with this pandemic. And at the end of the day, the sure shot way of avoiding it or avoiding catching it is to be immune to it. There is no other way at this point of time. And through what the government has been saying, and through a lot of experience that our people have had, the fact that homeopathic medicine really helps with building immunity is something which is catching on. And so I think it's actually a good time to be in homeopathy at this point of time, because people understand that, look, this is a sure shot, safe way that you can build your immunity. Of course, building your immunity is not a guarantee that you will not catch something, but it is an insurance that helps you prevent it to a large extent. And definitely the percentages are in your favor. So going forward, I think our biggest learning is that the more you're there for your patient, the more you're reaching out to the patient. Going back to what I said about a brand being what a brand does, the fact is that in a crisis, what you say matters far more than when it's peacetime and everything is hunky-dory. And it is in the crisis that we tried to stand up and tried to say the right thing and tried to do the right thing. It wasn't perfect, but it doesn't matter, because you are trying and you're trying hard. And I think patients understand that, customers understand that, and they reward you for it. So standing up and doing the right thing and reaching out to people in this crisis was, I think that what worked and what will continue to work. And obviously focus on what the customers want. And at this point of time, I think the biggest concern that people have is around immunity. And of course, that is going to be a key focus area for us also, to be able to create plans that will protect the immunity, which will help the immunity, whether it be corporates at a large scale level or it be individual patients. So that's really going to be our focus. And lastly, there is this saying that hope is greater than fear. And so that's something that we believe in. And I cannot begin to tell you how much our patients have appreciated the fact that we have reached out to them and given them hope, and given them the courage to say that, listen, you can go on. Because many of our patients are older, many of our patients have other diseases, obviously, which make them immunosusceptible. And hence giving them that hope and giving them that courage and giving them that confidence that they can go out and face the world and this disease has been, I think, really good. And that's what we're going to continue to do.
Great response, Sanjoy. Thanks. So I guess one of the takeaways, that one is seeing is, I think, the ability of businesses to actually look at the opportunity that a disruption of this sort presents. And you said it very well, Sanjoy, but one of the startups I'm involved with in the healthcare space, they're seeing a huge surge in this whole business of teleconsultation, right? I mean, we've all seen that there are some upsides to COVID. One is e-education. Who would have thought remote education would come down to primary schools? Who would have thought teleconsultation with doctors would become a way of life, right? No one wants to go to a clinic. Most clinics are shut. So great to see the fact that you guys are looking at the opportunity. Neeraj, coming over to you, the alcobev industry has always had to be very discreet about its marketing, right? Because given certain regulatory constraints and otherwise. And also the fact that the shutdown really brought alcohol sales, to a kind of grinding halt in a manner with most stores having shut. Now, you guys, Beam Suntory operates all across the spectrum, but predominantly the higher end, right? Lafroy, among others. How do you see your marketing mix playing going forward? I mean, what are the consumer touch points? How are you going to kind of get your message across to consumers, in the days ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Lloyd. So, when you represent a powerhouse portfolio which has stood the time of 200 years or more, I think there is a certain legacy on heritage, which and the trust which comes with those brands, which really start the whole conversation. And as you rightly said, whether it's our Japanese portfolio of Yamazaki or Hibiki, or our malls from Scotland, which is Lafroy or Bowmore, or even Teacher's Scotch Whisky in India, or our bourbons like Jim Beam and Maker's Mark from Kentucky, I think they are long-standing, very renowned, old, trusted brands, and still very contemporary and relevant for occasions for consumers. So the good news is the category tends to be recessionary resilient across multiple times in the last 2 centuries. And then when you look back at what happened in the SARS time in 2003, or the GFC, or even the highway ban in 2017, when some parts of the channels came down to the knees, I think there has been a lot of that incidents and precedents which has been set in, which continues to make us believe that at the end, consumers enjoy the drinks and they should be given access and they should enjoy it responsibly. But when we look back in the last 2 months now, Lloyd, what we've seen, first of all, large parts of the channels were shut, right? So the whole bars and restaurants, the whole the on-premise, that got shut. The whole GTR, the global travel retail, or the airport duty free, that got shut. And these are this is where the retail theater happens. And if that's shut, what do you really do to launch or to continue to sustain, the awareness and the equity of your brand? That became then the key focus for us as we look at figuring out what touch points of consumers now matter and what threshold of investment would those new touch points need. We started basically, first of all, reaching out to channel partners. And we discovered, like, for example, we spoke to the National Restaurant Association of India, which is a fairly good representation across multiple large chain restaurants and bars. And we realized that in the month of March and April, they were really, looking at wage bills of bartenders and wait staff, and they just didn't have the cash to continue to look at in the uncertainty. So again, with our overall philosophy of growing for good, and it's not necessarily a brand or the corporate, but we pledged 1 crore rupees towards that association probably in the first week of the lockdown, which said, yes, there will be masks and sanitizers and all the other stuff, but I think at the first instance, the champions which get our brands to from liquid to lips, that's something we need to get out there and support. We started a bartending championing program called Learn and Home, because obviously all of the virtual meetings and the recipes, etc., were being done. But how do we make sure people do make some money, people who are the extended community of this company? So there's been a lot of that happen. Looking at consumers, for the first 40 days, it was a dry lockdown, and that was the nature of the lockdown. And I think over time, we realized that India and South Africa were the only 2 countries in the entire world which was going through a longish dry lockdown. India opened earlier. South Africa presumably opens on the 1st of June. So they're still in a dry lockdown. Then we looked at what does it mean. E-commerce is still not permissible in the country as per the local state excise rules. We then used that time to engage with the state regulators and with the central regulators as an industry body to say why more than ever, home delivery continues to be the most important enabler of supply chain for this phase. We saw some of those initial first day sites in Delhi and all of that. So that helped, and that really paved the way for different forms of home delivery models, which are now being experimented, and hopefully they will sustain and they will get refined over time. And we are working together with the various regulators on that. That was the other piece. So therefore, there is going to be more work. What used to be digital marketing for a brand extension of Alcobev company now has become more relevant, wherein you can link and click and collect kind of segue into the marketing space. That was the other. And lastly, as we look forward into, how do we continue to be relevant with our brands, with our consumers, some of our, old long-standing brands, the message not being, there is a bit of heritage there. There is not being sympathetic, but getting empathetic, being sensitive. I think that continues to be the way we will carve out messages. In December, we launched a new brand in India, first real, foray in the IMFL space. It's called Oaksmith, and it's created by the creator of Yamazaki, and it's available in Maharashtra and Telangana. That's where our focus is at the moment. That this brand needs support. It's just out there 2 months before the lockdown. So we are now in the last 2 months engaging totally using digital, and we've kind of had weekend lives every Saturday and Sunday. There's been some form of music and performances in live, because the whole thing is about craftsmanship. So continue to do that at a level where the brand becomes relevant in consumer homes, even if they can't try it at the moment. The way we look at going forward, Lloyd, the market touch points or the market touch point audits as what we do. And there is an influential touch point, and then there is a threshold to kind of ignite that touch point. And that's the research and the consumer insights we're gathering at the moment as to what's changed, what is changing in terms of innovation, what's changing in terms of the price points, because pricing has gone through, a massive change. As you saw, there have been tax incidents which have happened. So what does it mean? Which brands matter? What does it mean for the architecture of our brands? So there's a whole lot of that which is being done now by our marketing teams, and therefore that will be the outcome of that you will see in the years to come. But I think the fact that it has been a 200-year-old legacy portfolio, and it continues to be, hopefully going forward, a long sustained portfolio, gives us a lot of confidence.
Thanks, Neeraj. Ajay, coming across to you, with all that's happened in the last, since this disruption, how is your marketing mix going to switch? Are you going to be, far more digital going forward? What are the elements that you see changing in the marketing mix that you've presently deployed?
So Lloyd, with your permission, before getting into a marketing mix, let me just tell you who are we marketing to.
Sure.
Marketer, you know that there are 3 principles you should always use as your starting points. One is, who is your customer? The second, who is your competitor? And third, obviously, the fallout is, why me? I think during this pandemic, everyone has started questioning that paradigm, saying, if it ain't broke, why fix it? But fortunately for us at Aditya Birla Capital, we had conceptualized our entire model and our strategy and launched it in 2017, where we sat on around a table and discussed who is our customer. And if money is your category, the fact is every living being is your customer, right? And because either you need money if you don't have it, or if you have money, you need to deploy your money. So therefore, we got into a category and we redefined our category as against what we were in the past till 2017. We went to consumer as a mutual fund, a life insurance, a housing finance, a wealth management, and what have you. We realized that our category is actually money and the role that money plays in the lives of people. So now suddenly our customer is a money customer, and we as a why me give him all the money solutions that he may need across his life cycle. So today, when I compare myself against the competitors, we realize that our competition is not the traditional mutual fund to mutual fund, life insurance to life insurance, or what have you. We suddenly looked at ourselves as a pan financial services player, and we go to consumer as just that. And therefore, now we don't look at just a customer. which is the end customer. We look at the intermediary, which I had referred to earlier, which is our distributors and our channels through whom we get the product out there. And then we look at the customer's lifetime value. So as against competition who can go and sell you only one product in good time or bad, who can only sell you the same product whether you need it or not, we start by asking you, not telling you, what is your need? And I think that's what 2017 did for us, where we started, that famous quote of, I think it was Steve Jobs, who said, it's not the customer's job to know what he wants. It's our task to read things that are not yet on the paper. And I think that's what we did. So today, when we reach out to our customer, we realize that one, our customer has multiple needs. And we don't reach out to him as only one that we represent, but we reach out to him now, which is relevant to him, money, or like I said earlier, health and wealth. What we have done during these times to start with is first we've looked at our existing customers. During these times, they have lots and lots of questions in their minds and they don't know whom to go to. We've heard the voice of our customer, whether it's through the call center, whether it's through emails, whether it's through the social media. And we've gone to the customers at home with the top FAQs. For example, in our life insurance and health insurance, everyone wants to know, is coronavirus covered in your policy? They want to know which hospitals can they go to, private, public, or both. So that's what we've done with our existing customers. Top of mind questions, go to them direct at home and answer those questions. We've used this time to reach out to the customers of our other lines of businesses. So if you have a mutual fund, we come to you with all the other products which are equally relevant to you today. And again, we've chosen to go to consumer where he is. And therefore, mass media is no longer our preferred medium, but it is where he is today. And social seems to be, or the email seems to be where he is most of the time. And as brand Aditya Birla Capital, we are going to him again, the brand promise that we always chose. We will not tell you what to do. We will not tell you what's in your interest. We will provoke you by asking you questions and discover yourself, because we know every individual is different. There is no prescriptive medicine that I can give all my audiences, all my customers. And that's a mistake which often competition does. So we provoke them by asking questions and then giving them a means. There is a CTA, there is a call for action, which helps him self-discover a solution which is right for him. So that's been our strategy, Lloyd.
Great, Ajay. Fantastic. Rana, I'm going to come across to you and, taking a little bit from what both Neeraj and Ajay talked about, is that a lot of you guys deal with a wide variety of clients, right? And you'll see a lot of their communication objectives will now get tweaked, given the new normal or the new reality as we're talking about. Also, a realization that's happened, and I've, heard about this, is that a lot of media surprises have got sprung up. Most of you guys must be aware of this, but suddenly the off prime time period where the advertising rates are 1/12 prime time, so the 8 to 11 is the big spending. The off prime time rates, which are a fraction of these ones, suddenly the off prime time viewing has gone up, right? Which also raises questions about the fact that a lot more people are watching television during the day. And therefore, there are brands like Amul that have quickly kind of moved into these off prime time slots, partially aided by shows like Ramayana and Mahabharata being run through the day. So therefore, Rana, in the context of the clients and that you have across your group, are you seeing a lot of tweaks in both media and communication objectives? And can you talk through some of these?
Yeah, I think, so you're right. So of course, the way, I'll probably split it into two parts. So let's say that COVID time when we were used or we were conditioned and we were thinking in a certain way. And then when this entire thing came and hit us and everybody started actually, so there was a complete stop. So there was complete silence. There was suddenly pulled back, let's figure out what do we do, how do we do, and what do we manage, how do we. And if you look at the complete mix of clients, probably the group has, all the categories across the entire group, whether it's media, creative, and if I start looking at health and digital, and even if I look at everybody, so across our 7-8 companies, we've got a very healthy mix. And in our first month review, when we were doing our internal Mancom review and we were looking at the kind of numbers and all, of course, media got the massive impact because we knew that the biggest stop happened in all the media spends first, right? So what we realized that the creative agencies and the digital agencies and the health agencies, there wasn't a massive impact in the terms of work or in terms of conversations or in terms of conversations. Just that maybe some of the engagement platforms had changed, but work kept going on. Everything was happening. The media engagement started changing in a much larger scale because a lot of launches got impacted. A lot of conversations of announcements got impacted. A lot of, what product. So let's say it was summertime, right? So the point is a lot of summer brands which were, hanging on for this entire summer to push the white goods or the air conditioners or the refrigerators. Everybody stopped. The retail outlets had stopped. Everything had stopped, and so we saw a complete stop in certain categories because the retail outlets were not open. Things were not moving. The essential services, the way the entire thing got labeled, and the non-essential services, sometimes you look back and think that, actually it was a bit unfair because a lot of these non-essential services are actually essential. It's not like you can lock down 2 months and say that, delivery of mobile phones or delivery of a lot of these electronic items are not essentials, because these are essentials, absolutely essentials. You can't shut down a house and say, I will not be able to service your toaster or service your basic stuff at home, which doesn't come under essential. So what we've definitely seen is a lot of conversations in the world of digital, but not necessarily, we are not seeing a change in terms of, I will be the last person to say that television or any kind of forms are going to go out of the window. It is all coming back. That's what I'm saying. When I look at now and I see that the partial opening has started, the engagements of all the clients of conversing and trying to say, okay, let's go back and let's start engaging. So I'm sure you would have seen a lot of the full page ads of Hyundai and all back in Times of India and everything, because, cars need to sell. We need to start selling all the products again. So television viewing is going to come back. So a lot of, clients of ours are naturally pumping in money back into television, because if you look at the brands like Reckitt, and you look at Dettol, and you look at Lysol, Harpic, everything, these are all essential, or, these are particularly on the health and hygiene and all. So, is there a complete dramatic shift or a paradigm shift which has happened? It just happened because of these 2 months. I understand what Ajay is saying, because that category behaves in a certain way. I also understand, why Neeraj and Karan, again, these are categories which actually can adapt very well in a very different way, where you don't need, a lot of media, which probably they were using or not using. But to 70% of the categories that we are seeing and where we are holding forth, and we are seeing a lot of the conversations coming back to television. We are looking at print kind of advertising work coming back. We are looking at the impact of, a multi-digital, a lot of impact conversations coming back, which had probably gone out for the 2 months, which is understandable. You can't start pushing people to say that, why you're not pushing it out. So I think that, if I try and put a clear direction forward, I think, yes, one-on-one, like we said, a lot of conversations need to be, a lot of conversations is happening, and we are not going to be discussing that bit, but I think a lot of conversations are getting into a very meaningful, I'm not talking purpose, we are not talking purposeful, I'm talking about a lot of meaningful. I think Karan and somebody also touched upon your consumer connect, like what Ajay is saying. It is now emphatic that you understand your consumer, and we are in fact, completely getting that point far better than ever. Earlier, it was that you would probably create something or talk about something or distribute something, and imagine that you're going to probably do a, one kind of a helicopter shot, and you will get a lot of people. No, the consumers are, I think you are going to see a bit of a change in the consumer when they come out of the lockdown, because they've got used to a certain way of working. So I think, when we are looking at the kind of media mix we are doing, I think that also, as media agency, we have to become extremely critical that when we consult our clients everywhere, that we explain to them why this media is going to be more personal or more emphatic versus the others. So there's a mix and match of learnings and a lot of changes. I don't see a dramatic change, like I said, but there would be some changes that is naturally emerging.
Thanks, Rana. Just to share a perspective of some of the early stage companies that I work closely with. The first level of calls we did was to check on the runway of cash they have. How long can they survive when business pretty much is at a standstill? But the second and the more relevant exercise that we did was really looking at the resilience of the founders and the agility of the business, the ability to pivot itself. And I think that's something that I picked up from a lot of what you guys said. You guys are obviously running much larger businesses. But for early stage companies, it's really the resilience of the founders, the ability to look at the opportunity amidst all this crisis, and the ability to pivot or to look at new channels of distribution, given that traditional channels are being brushed aside. And I, certainly take a lot of what you guys said, kind of substantiates that. We're having quite a stream of audience questions coming in, and Hari Govind Nair, who's the editor of CEO, has been curating some of them. So I'm going to kind of share some of these questions with some of you, and would love kind of short responses to them. Karan spoke about the fact that how is he going to take the whole home buying experience online, right? How do you give consumers that whole feel of what predominantly was earlier a physical exercise, when you actually went to an agent, who took you to a house and looked at it. But here's an interesting question from Amit Mukhi, and I'm going to ask Ajay to take a first shot at it. Says, will a contact-free world change the experience in a world that has been greatly tactile? How will brand values come across, be transmitted to consumers in a more distant world? If my screen is your store, from what will you do? If my screen is your storefront, what will you do to keep the same experience as what we are used to? Ajay, you want to take a shot at it?
Yeah, sure, Lloyd. I'll just take off from where we last left off and then answer his specific question. I think it's no longer going to be about TV, or it's no longer going to be about digital, or it'll remain where it always has been, the way you and I have looked at it as marketers, right? Where is the consumer? So in today's times, when I spoke about our choice of medium, it is because we know we cannot go one to many. We have to go one to one, and therefore we have chosen a certain media or media mix. What we have to watch out in these times is what I'm calling a bhed chal, a herd mentality. The point is that one person makes an offer to get his newspaper to you at your doorstep in a digital form. Everyone does it within 1 week. How do you differentiate yourself? So even when it comes to the store experience, the question that was asked, my answer is the same. While I told you in my category, it's predominantly high touch, some of high tech, but in the new world, I'm loving this engagement, right? I would have never met Lloyd for months if it was left to his busy calendar and his many commitments. But here's Lloyd in front of me. So it is high touch as far as I'm concerned, but it is totally high tech. And I think that's the point with stores too. We've heard about it. We have seen glimpses of it. But today it will have to be the whole store experience. You will have to be able to make me touch, feel, and experience it. And if I cannot get all the senses on the store, it's not going to work. And if everyone does that, whether it's an apparel brand, for example, we in Aditya Birla Group have an apparel brand, and we are preparing for that. But if I do it as well as the next guy does it, again, we are back to parity. The why me question doesn't get answered. So I think we have to tailor make it to the brand, as I always said earlier, and again, you have to tailor make it to the consumer, the competition, and the brand. There cannot be a standard solution for everyone. There cannot be a bhed chal. One guy did it, let's all follow, but you will have to marry it very well. High touch will not go out of fashion with many categories, including retail, the shopping experience. But can you give me the senses? Audi tried to do that some years ago where there was no COVID-19, but they tried to give you the experience on your screen. You felt you were revving the car the way you would if you were sitting in the car. Very difficult. But if you can do that, and Rana is there to help all of us do that, I think you're home.
Thanks, Jai. And Karan, coming across to you, and I'm going to ask you a kind of slightly specific. There's been a trend of a few brands, as they say, cashing in on the crisis, right? Trying to say something smart. We all recognize as marketeers that we want to keep the dialogue with our consumers. We want to keep your brand top of mind, and therefore there have been brands that have, kind of.
I can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me roll this question again. So I'm saying that there's been a temptation.
Now I can.
Okay, there's been a temptation for a lot of marketers to ensure that their brand keeps a dialogue going with consumers through this period, right? Obviously, with some medias being blocked out, let's say outdoor is pretty much non-existent, and the newspapers were, not widely circulated for a while. A lot of brands went on overdrive on social media, trying to put out positive messaging, about social distancing, about washing your hands and such like. At the same time, obviously, there were some brands trying to cash in on this period, talking about the advantages of having a particular brand of air purifier or a particular air conditioner that will kind of, in a sense, provide you some degree of protection against this, this virus. What are your thoughts on brands kind of, forcing communication or kind of force-fitting communication down, as opposed to just staying back and saying, hey, we'll wait out this period? Love your take on that, Karan.
It's a very counterintuitive, instinctive answer. It's obviously crap, right? If brands try and do force fitting of heights of a sales pitch, even in these kind of times where people by and large are very worried, anxious about their health, about their wealth, and Ajay put that very sharply. See, the point is this, and again, I'll just pick on a couple of points from where Ajay left. One set of people you have is your current customers, and they have a whole lot of questions that they want answered as well, in terms of, will I be safe? How safe will my investment be? How will you take care of me while I live in your condominium? Will my payment plans that we agreed upon 6 months ago remain the same? Etc. etc. So there is a whole lot of conversation that needs to happen with your current set of owners, customers, buyers, and that holds true for all brands, not just real estate. The other is the conversation that needs to happen with prospects or with people that you would want to ideally reach out to. I think if anything, this is the time where brands need to be at their most honest, truthful, authentic best. If anything, this is the time where consumers will be even more unforgiving of brands that they see are trying to be cheeky or trying to profit from the opportunity that there is right now. Consumers are fairly intelligent guys like you and me, right? Perhaps more intelligent than you and me. We can see through when brands are being sensitive, genuine in putting out a certain kind of communication. And we can also see through when brands are just trying to a bit too hard to kind of come across as being relevant in a particular context where actually people are saying that you're not relevant. So why the hell would suddenly every brand want to talk about how it's good for your immunity? Yeah. And you see that happening in a lot of communication space right now. Brands that have never spoken about immunity or have not naturally been associated with that ecosystem of knowledge or attributes are also jumping onto that bandwagon. So my point is very simple. I think consumers can see through who's being true, who's being genuine, who's being authentic. Consumers can see through that this is a cookie cutter communication that is going out to everyone, or is this a one-on-one response to my specific queries and my specific needs? Of course, tomorrow if there is a new project, a mega announcement to happen, I will do a newspaper ad and lots of them once again. But right now, if my requirement is to have as many individualized conversations as possible with current and prospective customers, then I don't need to do a newspaper ad right now unless there is a one mega announcement that needs to be made on something. Now I need to reach out through EDMs, through mailers, through Zoom calls, through video calls, through specific SMSs, letters, and all of this is made possible by friends like Rana and that entire tribe. Because I think if anything, during this time, the marketing function and the agency ecosystem that supports the marketing function has probably been the busiest. So my simple, straightforward advice would be just be genuine and authentic. Don't think that you can pull a fast one over somebody and profit from a situation like this. If you do, God bless you, because consumers will skin you as they should, and I would encourage them to when they see people or brands trying to profit from this kind of situation. Listen, you guys want to buy a house, you guys want to buy a home, I'm around. This is my phone number, this is my email ID, call me, text me, whatever. But I'm not going to come running to you right now saying that this is the right time for you to buy a house. Right? But can I have that conversation and continuous engagement with you saying, you're still in our mind, we're still thinking about you, I'm hanging around, anytime you want, just speak to me, call me over a video call, over a phone call, whatever. I will do that. But do I need to, do a hard sell on, this is the best time of your life to buy a particular product that I sell, I think that's just completely stupid. That's my point of view.
I think great advice, Karan. I kind of completely agree with the fact that, the tone of a brand should always be authentic, true, and honest. And any attempt to cash in on a situation, a great human tragedy like this is not acceptable. But very often as CXOs, as CEOs, as marketers, we'll always be walking the fine line. There's been a fairly big controversy about some companies that have announced, large contributions to the PM Cares Fund, and a couple of days later, announced huge layoffs, right? And so therefore, there's one question that, smart consumers are asking, saying, oh, great stuff, right? You aligned yourself with making good contributions to see as a good corporate citizen. And guess what? Next day, you're firing a whole bunch of people. And this is happening all across. I mean, brands, newspapers, we've all heard these stories. But I hear you loud and clear. I think the takeaway is be honest, be authentic, be transparent, and don't try to con the consumer. It now works in the short run. It now works in the long run. And I think that's great advice. I'm going to come to one more question and pop this to Sanjoy. And this is from Biren Ghosh. So we're getting a whole stream of questions. Clearly, the response has been good. What are the ideas that you never thought of before that have bubbled up to the top and will now become one of your priorities over the next 60 odd days? Right? So, Sanjoy, you want to take a crack at this?
So, obviously, adversity is opportunity, and so this kind of an adversity is a lot of opportunity to create lots of differential solutions. The fact is that if you see our business, there are two parts of the business, and there is the medical and the medical counseling part of the business. And there is another part of the business, which is the aesthetics part of the business, where someone actually has to come and there's some physical action which happens, and which is the part of the business which becomes very difficult to do when, in this kind of a situation. And I think, taking, kind of agreeing with what a lot of us have been saying, the fact is that this whole mass marketing solution and this whole solution of one size fits all is not going to be relevant anymore. And things are going to be far more customized. Things are going to be far more one-on-one. And look at the way we have been leading our lives. Things are going to be far more do-it-yourself. So I think some of the directions that we are thinking of is far more in that direction of do-it-yourself, far more in the direction of being able to give you the same kind of an experience, the same kind of an interaction, the same kind of confidence. At the end of the day, what are we trying to replicate? We are a medical services company, and the power of the healing power of a doctor placing his or her hand on your forehead is tremendous. And if that is not going to be possible, or that is going to be challenged, or that is going to happen not as often as it used to, then I have to be able to replicate that. And so the warmth of the communication, the empathy of the communication, the connect in the communication is going to be really, really critical. And I can tell you that it's a bit of an art also. It's not just technology. Technology is one thing. And of course, that technology is available and we will avail of it and everyone will avail of it. But the art of being able to communicate and create that warmth, create that feeling of connectedness on a screen is something that is going to need a fair amount of training. And I think we will, as an organization, invest in a fair amount of training in making sure that happens, because that's not necessarily natural to everyone. So I think that's the other thing. So two things: one, the manner in which we communicate naturally. And secondly, I think we have to allow our patients and our customers to do it themselves a lot more, because I think that is going to be, the new buzzword.
Thanks, Sanjoy. One quick question from Deepak Kamal, and I'm going to pose this at Neeraj. And Neeraj, really the point that Deepak is making is saying that the offline trade is not going to open the way it is, right? The last few weeks and hopefully in some time to come. And a lot of our conventional marketing is targeted towards the offline trade, right? The point of sale, the signage, and the show windows and display. How do you position the brand in the new product launches in now what's going to be a slightly different world, where people are going to be a little bit more wary getting to bars, getting to such places? For a lifestyle brand like yours in Alcobev, how are you going to, what are the new communication challenges? And if you can keep this brief because we've got just about 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, great question, Lloyd. And that's something which is staring all of us in terms of how do we become relevant for consumers. So first of all, I think the theater of what you would like to do and the conduits who help you to do that. I think it's time to identify those champions and build that army. For example, if retail is not going to be largely available, and there are wall bays and shelf hires and all of that which brands have inside, how do we keep getting by way of online interventions in homes on the screens in a manner which is regulated but yet can be done? That's kind of the first challenge. So we are investing to find, there is technology, of course, but there are probably other ways to reset and repurpose a lot of what we do. Home parties, for example, will take, I mean, inspiring human connections, that's not going to change. People will want to socially connect. Physical distancing is going to continue. So those are two constraints, but a solution could be found. So of course, in India, it's not allowed, but in Singapore, for example, I know we're working very closely with large bars where fantastic cocktails are being sent home in the right packaging so that they remain fresh. So home parties or the DIY, which I think was spoken, is going to be very relevant. So how do you make yourself and arm yourself at home? It's almost a bit of a prowess which you want to demonstrate as well with your friends and close family and all of that. So the element of DIY in terms of the tools a brand can put forward for home parties or home consumption, whether it's a savoring moment or it's a let loose and lively moment, I think there are brands which can do enough number of merchandise to help that. Moving away from the in-store environment for a bit, and I think it'll come back as we go, but helping our customers to deliver that experience from a distance. For example, in Gurgaon, when it opened, we were working with customers, and in the queue, you would take the order so that the person going right up to the counter, you would have the order ready. So there are ways in which you can still be relevant as a brand in a non-onerous way in front of the consumers. So these are going to be the 2 or 3 things, but I think a lot of action will move to the home. That's my fundamental belief, especially in the category we are in.
Small Lloyd, if it's possible, small thing that I want to just add here, something that Neeraj touched upon, and I thought I just want to reiterate something. I think this is a great time to drive advocacy. It is a great time to drive evangelism from your current customers. It's a great time for people to share and share stories about brands, how they're enjoying it. I'm for example a very old Lagavulin and Lefroy fan. Every time I sip these drinks, there is a conversation that I will always have with my friends around me. Likewise, if I'm somebody who is staying in a DLF condominium, I will talk about how when everything was shut down, there was still a virtual food festival that DLF was creating for us and ensuring that food was delivered home, or the lobbies were sanitized, or golf carts were available to ferry you from the main gate to the home. The point I'm trying to make is that this is a time where brand experiences can drive brand advocacy. A lot of people at home, a lot of people on screens, a lot of people on WhatsApp. If marketers can focus on that rather than what is not happening, I don't need a newspaper ad to drive advocacy. I don't need a shop signage right now to drive advocacy. I don't need a added dispensing counter if I'm Coke or Pepsi to drive advocacy. Sure, some of these things are obviously out of home, but the point is that we still don't need to run behind whether the signage is there or not there, or whether the ad is there or not there, or whether the point of sale is adequately decked up or not. If you can drive advocacy and champion and have your current consumers champion the brand while staying at home and while experiencing those brands, I think as marketers, that's something that we must actively try and drive and push forward, rather than be only besotted with what is the next new mass communication that I've created.
Great point, Karan. Thanks for that intervention. In fact, it brings a larger point about the whole fact that a lot of this lockdown has kind of turned a lot of the focus of media into social, which is user-generated content. What are people saying about brands? What are people saying about concerns? Like for a lot of us, the whole push into reading an e-paper happened courtesy of the lockdown, right? A lot of us may not have been familiar with the e-paper or were not being comfortable, but once you start doing a thing for a certain period of time, it becomes a bit of a habit. One last quick question to Rana. And Rana, especially in the context of communication, do you see any dramatic change in the communication mix from your clients? If it was predominantly television, print, with digital as an afterthought, are you seeing digital getting more mainstream? Are you seeing a big drop in print? What's the quick early indications that you're getting out of Harvest Group?
So I think, yeah, you're right. I think so. There is like I said, there has been a reaction to the way people are going to consume media. So, print is naturally getting hit. So that is obvious because a lot of these conversations have moved into the digital medium. So we are seeing that as an initial reaction. So while some of the conversations will keep continuing to be, a launch will continue to have that impact. If we go back to the physical version, so be it, unless, and of course, but digital is taken a much larger scale of conversation. I think the point that is interesting, and I think that is something I would like to leave back with. I think, what we used to describe and we used to keep talking, content. I think content is coming out as a much larger conversation. Now, whether we do it content one-on-one or whether we do content through a emailer, and it applies to all who are in this panel, whether you create, it's not the medium also. So whether we do content, even in content on television, whether we, you're not talking about OTT, we are still saying cinema halls are going to come back. There is radio, there is podcast, there is webinars. So there is content which is going to keep driving the conversation, and it has to be a certain value or a meaning, which is that conversation. Again, very early days, so I don't want to be a soothsayer to say that certain mediums are going to fall out. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of whether print will get severely impacted when we get back to our life. The other conversation that a lot of us are saying is that maybe 6 months, 1 year down the line, when we all accepted that this is going to be part of our life and we go back to our normal lives, we're going to behave probably 80% the way or 90% the way we were. So a lot of these adoptions will come back. A lot of media habits will be similar. Yes, certain changes will happen, certain impacts will happen. For example, we are not discussing experiential marketing and launches of events and everything. It's severely hit industry, something we don't even know. So are we going to discuss that? Will launches stop completely? So there are many new, impacts that we are seeing. But I think generally speaking, television we are seeing that's not going to get impacted severely. OTT content, newer forms, digital, yes. So there's no running away from the fact that digital in any form is going to keep becoming the driver for all of us. But it depends on the content that we're going to roll it out, because people are now also switching off. You can see the issues that, let's say, a medium like TikTok just faced recently. So conversations have to be very culturally driven. Content has to be very impactful. And then we'll see how it moves. Like I said, for us, it's very clear, Lloyd, show must go on. And the show must go on because we've got fantastic clients across the group. We have fantastic people, and we are there, and we will keep molding ourselves and adapting to what the need is. And you can always count, and these are great friends I have. We are here to ensure that the business moves on. We keep ensuring consumers stay engaged with us, and whatever that medium be, if we have to create a new one, we'll create a new one for all of you. But we're here.
Indeed, well said, Rana. So indeed, the show must go on. I think that's a great point when kind of round up. But quick takeaways. I think one thing that we all heard loud and clear is that stay authentic, stay true to your brand, stay honest about your messaging. I think Ajay made the point very clearly about keeping the consumer front and center. Right? Don't forget that through all this crisis, people are people. They'll still long for personal interactions. So keep the consumer front and center in whatever you do. I think you made the good point, Rana, about the fact that life will resume. As humans, we are social beings. We want to get back, and things are going to move. And I particularly like what Sanjoy's take on the whole business. That with every crisis, you have an opportunity. How do you look beyond the immediate crisis? How do you look at ways to innovate? The fact that people are looking at alternate forms of medicine, looking at homeopathy, I think that was interesting. So great discussion all around. Thanks for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Deepak from CEO Lounge. I think he wants to say a few things. But wonderful chatting with you guys, and have a great weekend, and hopefully stay safe, and or we'll catch each other in the physical world soon enough. Deepak, all yours.
Thank you, Lloyd. I think an outstanding and a very inspiring session, and I always keep saying it's not easy to moderate a session on a digital platform. You did a fantastic job, a very balanced moderation, and Ajay, Karan, Neeraj, Rana, Sanjoy, great insights, great discussion. So thank you very much. I remember Jack Welch always said that marketing is not anyone's job; it is everyone's job. And I have two takeaways today. One is, of course, the trust. And that is one. We need to build that, and the content build relationship, and relationship builds trust. And the second takeaway is that I wish I had seen all of your eyes before. I would have brought Lenskart as a sponsor, because every one of you are wearing a spectacle. So I missed a small opportunity down today. I'm going to extend this by 5 minutes and ask each one of you, what has been your personal lockdown moment during this time? And what is that one dish that you cooked in your kitchen? I know I'll start with Rana, because I know Rana is a great chef. So Rana, first you go on for it.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, so it's not like, I'm a great chef or something. It's just that, if you're with Deepak, he always challenges you to the most amazing, things, and then you have to perform, because, he'll suddenly put the limelight and say, okay, perform. So I think what I have managed to do, Deepak, and with all honesty, rather than a one-off thing and all, I've been visiting the kitchen every weekend. So every weekend for the last, I guess, 2 months now, every dish has been new and all. But I think what I mastered, and I think my entire group and a lot of my folks in my company have been saying, that the moment the thing opens, I've become a bit of a Thai expert. So I've been making Thai chicken, I've been making pasta, noodles, I've been making something on veg, and I've been trying, and then from buying packaged stuff, I made it authentic and all. So I think, I can now vouch to say that if you have a chef challenge coming up, you can tell all your friends that they're going to have serious competition from me.
Well, you have a bragging rights anyway, so that's good enough. Ajay, what has been your lockdown moment here?
Two things, Deepak, and I'll do it quickly. Clients are known to go beyond the brief. So let me give a leave behind thought on the discussion we had so far. We've discussed what we should do. We haven't discussed what we should achieve. So my leave behind thought on that is, we have to, as marketers, learn to spend to earn, or else, as David Ogilvy said, we sell or else. We'd rather remain in cash. Coming back to your question. I love sweet. I love dessert. I push my wife, I push my daughter to make it. I've gone back to my old hobbies of making sweet, and apple crumble is what I've rediscovered making.
Interesting. And Neeraj, we want to hear things beyond the cocktail here. Tell us something about food here.
So Deepak, I'm in a true lockdown. My family is in Singapore, and in the good old times, they were meant to join me in June after their school term ends. And here I am for the last 65 days, all by myself. So the moment I put a picture in my condo that I have these brands and I'm doing bartending lessons, I got popular. So I get food, thankfully, from gracious neighbors. But the one thing I've cooked, taking lessons from my mother and my wife, is really, I'm a Hyderabadi at heart. So some Hyderabadi khichdi, it had to get controlled to a cooker. That was my constraint. So beyond that, I'm not yet in. So that was a great experience for me to get some comfort food beyond the great taste which I've been getting from lovely neighbors.
Well, Sanjoy, you spoke about that you started going into the kitchen now. So let's hear from you, and what have you really learned beyond boiling the egg here?
Yeah, well, it was amazing that I got challenged actually by someone to show that I could cook, and a challenge really drives me to perform. So I have cooked all kinds of food. I have cooked 45 dishes. I have cooked Malwani food. I have cooked Chettinad food. I have cooked Bengali food. I have cooked Kashmiri dum aloo, and whatnot, and Italian, and so I've been cooking a lot, and my wife helps me, and my daughter helps me, and I came out with a new saying that a family that cooks together fights a lot, and so it's been great fun. And it keeps a lot of interest going. So we and I've been going to the market. I've been doing grocery shopping. everyone at my home is in deep shock.
For all you great chefs, you also need great people to eat and appreciate, right? So hand raised there.
Anytime.
Karan, let's hear your part here. Apart from selling the houses, what else is happening down?
No, I'm a very simple meat and malt kind of a guy. Malts, I don't experiment with too much. I know what my favorites are and I stick to the basic kittings. Meat is something that I love equally, and there's been a lot of experimentation. So many new kinds of meat and many new ways in which I've now cooked them. I could accord fancy names to each one of those dishes, being a branding guy, but I still haven't done that. But yeah, those meat in various forms, avatars and recipes, following various experiments with spices. That's where I've been for most of the lockdown.
And Lloyd, what has been the Lloyd special?
Well, my primary responsibility at home that I've accepted, has largely been the official dishwasher. And I've cracked that. But having said which, I was for many years a scrambled eggs and toast kind of person. One dish that I was personally very fond of, which I've learned and I've turned out about 6 times. My wife's kind of had up here is the dal muradabadi. So I kind of learned it from scratch. I work a great dal muradabadi. So anytime you guys are this side of the NCR, always have you over. And I have a reasonable collection of malts that will keep both Neeraj, Karan, Ajay, Rana, all you guys happy.
Fantastic.
So dal muradabadi has been my little learning for this lockdown.
And Deepak, you have to tell us yours now.
At my home, we have a certain SOP. Even before washing the dishes, there are certain standard operating procedures to follow, especially a certain kind of a sanitizer to be put at the hands and thereafter. So yeah, it's a challenging exercise even to do that. So, but yes, I have very consciously started appreciating the work which the women at home do. I think that probably we miss it out somewhere, and this lockdown brought that thing in the forefront and started very consciously appreciating that particular part. So and a big thank you to all the attendees as well. We had about 250 plus folks who came in, and I think that's our biggest motivation. A lot of amazing questions. We'll answer all of them in the course of the week. And look forward to seeing you all next weekend. We have another very interesting set of panels on a topic called "The Show Must Go on entertainment industry." Until then, stay healthy, stay safe. Namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks everybody.
Bye.